South Carolina, Georgia, the surrounding areas. And they were, in many cases, considered freed because during that time, if I understand correctly, under Spanish rule, if a slave escaped from the plantation and made it to Spanish Florida and accepted to be a Catholic as their religion, they were free.
Well, yes, they also had to agree to serve the crown. If there was a war, then the males would have to go and serve the crown. That's very true, but let's make a distinction between the escaped slaves and black Seminoles. There's a big difference between the two groups. The black Seminoles are the ones who actually lived with or near the Seminoles, who did not have necessarily Indian blood, but they were identified as black Seminoles because of the relationship that they had with the Seminoles, which went back, in some cases, generations. So these are Indians, these are black people, and some of them were escaped slaves, but keep in mind, some of them were born in the tribe.
Right.
So they had never been a slave. And that really caused a lot of problems. Here comes the U.S. government saying we're going to round up these escaped slaves, and they start taking black Seminoles. And this guy's been a black Seminole for 80 years, and now you're being removed. So the Army couldn't tell which ones were escaped slaves, which ones were really black Seminoles, so they just rounded up everybody, took them back to Georgia, and that caused a lot of animosity between the American government and the Seminoles because they were taking their family members. Now, escaped slaves came in and did not necessarily associate with or live with the Seminoles. They simply lived and existed wherever they could. Many of them, of course, were caught, but they didn't have any kind of informal relationship with the Seminoles. The black Seminoles were in cahoots with them. They adopted each other's lifestyles. They shared weapons. They shared everything. But escaped slaves were not a part of that. And then on top of that, I'm sorry, you also got the Geeches who were here. That's another totally different group of blacks in Florida.
I want to ask you about that. Before you mention the Geeches, let's go back to our connection with the Geeches. Do you remember John on Long Island?
You help me with that.
Okay. When we were on Long Island picking potatoes as migrants, there were a number of people in the migrant camp that our father kept referring to as Geeches. We didn't know at the time, we were boys, we didn't know what a Geechee was. Now as a grown man, as we look back over history, come to find out the Geechees are from the Gullah community.
That's correct.
Living off of the east coast of Georgia, South Carolina.
They lived on the Barrier Islands off the Carolinas and off Florida. These were people who had been formerly slaves.
Right.
But who managed to take control of the environment in which they were living. The white people left, the